Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 234. We're doing week 9 NFL picks. Joined again by Jacob Kamaker from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing good today. I'm celebrating Halloween, as you can see, dressed up as Andy Reid. So I'm having a good time. I'm ready for this podcast.
Very nice. I should have remembered that you mentioned dressing up like Andy Reid last week, or I would have dressed up as someone, maybe one of his former players. I don't know who though. I did get that Will Fuller jersey, so maybe I should have bought like a weird hairstyle and worn it that way. But anyway, so how was your week 8, Andy Reid?
It was pretty bad. This was probably my worst week of the season, or it is my worst week since week 1. I went 5-9-1. The only week I have had worse was 5-10-1. I hated last week's slate. Anyway, there was just a lot of games that were going to be hard to predict in that one, and obviously it ended up being the case. I'm still 68-50-2 on the year. We've doubled the push count since last week. So I like this slate a lot better. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm hoping to get back on the right track. And my big unit picks did hit. Like, I had a lot on the Eagles over the Bills, so that ended up playing well. And Chargers-Bears was good for me too.
Yeah, the only big play I got wrong, or actually there were two, but only one in the Super Contest. So there were two. One was the Matt Schaub backdoor cover from being down 24-0. And I mean, the Super Contest spread was Seahawks -6.5, so we got that one right. But it was -8 or -8.5 in real life, and yeah, that was a loss. And that loss prevented me from going over 1,000 for the 6th week in a row. Still had a winning week. It was 8-7 overall, plus 435, I believe. So I'll take it. I wanted another 1,000, but I guess that was asking too much. And you never know when Matt Schaub is going to go off for 400 yards, right? The other big loss is the Panthers, and I'm kind of kicking myself for that one. I should have seen that coming. I love San Francisco, not last week, but like in general, and I'm not surprised at all to see him dominate like that. So, and I was going to ask you if you like the week 9 slate more, and it sounds like you do. I like it as well. There are 2 5-unit plays for me this week, one of which I'm considering is my pick of the month, depending on what the injury report looks like. So, yeah, let's get it going. So. The first game we'll discuss is the Thursday night game between the 49ers and at the Cardinals. This line opened up 49ers -10. It's still 10. Tons of action, as you might expect, on San Francisco. So are you with the public here?
I am with the public here, and you said it best. San Francisco is really, really good, and I was kicking myself a bit for the Panthers game last week too, because that was the biggest unit play that I missed on, and it was a pretty bad miss. I mean, San Francisco went over 50 against the Panthers team that's defense has been pretty solid for most of the year. So, I mean, we got to take that into account. They just completely dismantled them. And, they may be on the road here, but the Cardinals are going to be without Chase Edmonds. They're going to probably be without David Johnson. So you're looking at Kenyon Drake and Zach Zenner being the backs there. And Drake, they just got in a trade. Zenner was on the Saints before last week, and then he came into the game for the Cardinals, and I was like, how is he on this team? I thought he was on the Saints. So
right.
That tells you everything you need to know about their backfield. And the Niners pass rush is just so good. Kyler Murray's been sacked 26 times this year. They don't have a very good tackle at either side. DJ Humphries is okay on the left side, probably be better at right tackle. They don't have a right tackle. So, the only thing positive for Arizona is that they're 2-1 against the spread as a home dog this year. But given that the 49ers just won by 38, the Cardinals just lost by 22 to the Saints. So we're looking at teams that are coming off a combined win and loss of difference of 60 points. There's no way I go against the 49ers. So I'm on the 49ers -10 for 2 units. I would lock in early on this before the line shifts. I got burned by a double-digit cover by the Redskins last week on Thursday night, so there is a little concern there. But the 49ers are so much better than the Vikings, and they should really take it to the Cardinals.
Yeah, I usually like to time's yours, by the way. That was funny. I usually like to bet the better team on Thursday Night Football, and we kind of thought that was the Vikings last week. And like rightfully so, because the Vikings have been on fire and the Redskins have basically been a dumpster fire this whole year. But kind of something, that kind of came to my mind as the game was going on, and it looked like the Redskins were going to stick with the Vikings for most of the game, at least until Case Keenum got hurt. Was that the Redskins were dreadful at times this year, but that was when they had to start Colt McCoy or use Dwayne Haskins, and they were missing Brandon Sheriff, the guard, and Morgan Moses or Chase Roullier at center. So they were missing a couple of offensive linemen when they were really struggling. But they had all their offensive linemen back except for Trent Williams, and they had Case Keenum back at quarterback. So it wasn't a surprise that the Redskins were playing much better than we thought they would. So that game doesn't really affect this year. So I like the 49ers a lot. You mentioned their pass rush. They should be all over Kyler Murray. It's going to be tough for Murray to throw. Like we've seen Murray struggle when he's faced very talented pass rushes this year, and that's what he's going to see this game. So it's going to be tough for him. I think this line's a little high. Like I made this San Francisco -7.5, but still, like, given the circumstances, I'm still going to pick the 49ers. I don't know if I'm going to bet this game, so it sounds like you're more confident than I am. There could always be a backdoor cover or something, but I do like San Francisco. I'm just concerned about the public money.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. I just think that the Cardinals are just not as good as their record says they are. They've only really beaten up on lower level competition, and that was in recent weeks. We saw their true colors against the Saints, and I think they're gonna struggle. I like TJ's score here, 35-10. I could see that, something along those lines. So this is a good question too from TJ. Kyler Murray or Josh Rosen? I think it's pretty clearly Murray now because Rosen wasn't able to do anything in either place. I actually liked Rosen's skill set, but I don't know if he has what it takes to be a leader at this point, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick has outplayed Josh Rosen in Miami, and Rosen has, like you said, he has talent. Like he's very accurate, but he doesn't seem to love football, and that was a knock on him coming out of college. And that doesn't nothing has changed for me. My opinion hasn't changed. All right, let's move on to Sunday or Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Fortunately, I'd be very irate about this, but it's right after daylight savings time switch, so it's really like 10:30 a.m., which is like not too bad, but still 9:30 a.m. is kind of a bummer that we have to wake up early for this. So Texans versus the Jaguars in London. This line opened up Texans -3. It's down to Texans -1.5. So who do you like in this game?
I really like the Jaguars in this game. I also did not know this was an early game, so that is it's a little bit of a bummer, but the daylight savings angle saves me. I'm not working on Sunday morning, which is unusual, so I was looking forward to sleeping, but I guess we'll be all right. But anyway, yeah, the Jaguars, I think they should be favored in this game. I know it's not a true home game, but they've treated the London games like their home games. They're kind of, when they play there, they are the home team because they played the most games over there. And the Texans are dealing with injuries. They lost J.J. Watt, and they almost lost to the Raiders if it wasn't for Deshaun Watson getting kicked in the face and somehow completing a touchdown pass. I do not know how he did that, and props to him for being able to, but that was ridiculous. The Raiders could have easily won that game. It just the Texans' offense without Will Fuller just isn't as explosive. It just lacks that, big play potential. They can move the ball methodically, but Fuller's always a threat to catch an 80-yard touchdown every time he touches the ball. And then you look at Jacksonville, they're 5-3 against the spread. Gardner Minshew's been playing well in recent weeks. He's 2-1 coming off a loss this season. And the Jags defense has outplayed the Texans defense in recent weeks. And I just think the Jaguars win this one outright. I think the Texans are due for a loss, and I think they can be a little bit deflated. I know teams sometimes respond to losing guys like J.J. Watt. But I just don't think that defense is going to be good without him because the only notable guy I can think of in that front seven is Whitney Merciless.
Yeah, it's getting pretty barren for the Texans. It's a shame that J.J. Watt went down. I like Deshaun Watson despite what this guy says. This commentator, I like Watson. I hope he can win one day, but they're surrounding him with garbage. And Bill O'Brien fired all of their scouts, and they had the best scouting department in the NFL. And Bill O'Brien fired all of them, and we're kind of seeing what's going to happen, and it's pretty bleak for them. So until they fire Bill O'Brien, things aren't going to change. So Deshaun Watson, speaking of him, it's pretty easy to predict how he's going to do this year. So it's like whenever he's playing a team with a great pass rush, he struggles. Whenever he plays a team with a bad pass rush, he thrives. Like that Falcons game comes to mind where he threw all over them. Atlanta couldn't pressure him. Conversely, week 2 against the Jaguars, they scored. They barely scored at all. In fact, Gardner Minshew almost beat them. He led that drive at the very end. He appeared to throw the game-winning touchdown, game-tying touchdown, but they went for 2, and they didn't get it. So think about it this way. So if the Jaguars made that 2-point conversion, it's just one play. If they made that 2-point conversion, they would be 5-3 right now, and the Texans would be 4-4. If that were the case, I think the Jaguars would be favored in this game. And the Jaguars have been 4-2 since that loss. So they play better. They can get after the quarterback. They're healthier right now. And so I think the Jaguars are just better overall. Like outside of quarterback, number 1 receiver, and linebacker, I think the Jaguars are either even a little bit better or way better than the Texans at every single area in like for these 2 rosters. So I like the Jaguars, and I think I'm going to be betting on them. The amount really depends on the injury report, but it could be like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 units.
Yeah, and I had them listed as 3 units. Again, like you said, that injury report could make it go up a unit, down a unit, but I just completely agree with you. And I hadn't even factored in their game earlier in the season. I mean, that was Minshew's first start too, and he almost beat them. Now he's got pretty much a half season of starts under his belt, and he's looking a lot more comfortable and confident. And, they're starting to trust him. So I just think the Jaguars are the right side here. And I would say at the very least, this should be a pick 'em. And the line moving down or in favor of the Jaguars seems to indicate that a lot of people agree with us.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars should be favored. And that game, by the way, was in Houston. So it's like now this is a neutral site game. I'm actually giving the Jaguars a point for being in London because it's kind of like their second home, really, and they're so used to playing there. All right, the real Sunday afternoon slate starts with the Redskins at the Bills. Bills open up -10. It's creeping down to -9.5. So who do you like this game?
I like the Bills. I mean, the Bills are overrated, obviously. I mean, they just got crushed the Eagles, and that brought people back down to earth and being like, okay, all right, maybe the Bills aren't as good as we thought they were. But this game's going to come down to one thing, really. I'm on the side of the Bills now, and I may not be at the end of the day. It's going to come down to whether or not Case Keenum is healthy and if Dwayne Haskins plays. If Keenum plays, I think they cover the spread, the Redskins, that is, because the Bills haven't been as good as their record says they are, which is something that a lot of people love to say, but it's never true. Teams are never what the record says they are. They're always slightly different. But if Dwayne Haskins plays, he's going to struggle against the Bills defense. He has looked really, really bad in the 2 games he's played mop-up in. I'm not calling him a bust. There are a lot of Redskins fans out there that are very frustrated and are already calling him a bust, but he's just not ready for the starting role yet. So if he has to start against a defense as good as the Bills, he may have some issues. And the other big injury to watch is Quentin Dunbar on the defensive side for the Redskins. He's their top corner. He's been one of the better cornerbacks in the league, kind of flying under the radar. He's dealing with a hamstring. If he's not healthy, their defense is going to look a lot different. So those 2 injuries are really the key for me in this game. I'm kind of expecting that Keenum won't play, which is why I'm leaning on the Bills here. I may change my pick if Keenum does end up playing. Concussions are tricky, though, so you never know. But especially if the line's coming down, I'm going with the Bills, even though they're overrated. This is just not a fun game. I will probably not bet on this one.
Okay. Yeah. So we're kind of on the same page. I think if it's Haskins, I'm probably going to be on Buffalo. If it's Keenum, I think I'm going to be on the Redskins. Actually, I know I'm going to be on the Redskins, and I'm going to be betting them. I actually like this game a lot if Keenum's under center. So you mentioned that quote, that Bill Parcells quote. You are what your record says you are. Bill Parcells was never trying to handicap football games, so let's toss that one aside. And it's kind of proven to be a fallacy. I think that's evident even here. Like the Bills are 5-2, the Redskins are 1-7, but look at what they've done recently. The Bills just got blown out at home against the Eagles, and before that, they were losing to the Dolphins in the third quarter at home. And then the Eagles, I mean, sorry, the Redskins were they were fighting a close game against the Vikings until Case Keenum got a concussion, and before that they were battling San Francisco pretty tough at home. It was like 9-0, and even that Dolphins game when they played against Miami, which was in Miami, it was 17-3, I believe, and then there were a couple of weird garbage touchdowns. One of which I think I have to check the Circa contest, but that may have cost me like $143,000. But we'll see. That's a story for another time. To make sure
that cost me a perfect week. That game, garbage touchdown cost me a perfect week. So
it was brutal. Yeah, because in the Circa contest, they have a big payout for the monthly winner, and I think I was. I'm not sure. I didn't check the standings, but I think I'm one game away from being first place in October. So, and I had the Redskins because they were +3. But at any rate, like this spread says that these teams are 6.5 points apart. Giving 3 points for home field advantage. I don't think that's true. I think that's bogus. I would say these teams are about 2 or 2.5 points apart if Case Keenum plays and if Quentin Dunbar plays. So I would make this line like 5 or 5.5 if Keenum's under center. Given that, I love the Redskins. But like you said, we don't know if Keenum is going to play because he suffered a concussion. And as I said before, if it's Haskins, you just can't take the Redskins because he doesn't look like he's ready to play football in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and that is just the big key. It's whoever plays a quarterback is going to determine the pick here. You seem more confident in the Redskins than I am. I'm still holding a grudge against them for letting Miami back into that game because I would have had a very stupid 7-team parlay if they had won and had the perfect week. So I have a little bit of a grudge. So if you like this game, definitely listen to Walt on this one and feel free to bet it.
Yeah. That losing that parlay sucks for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I want to make sure that that's really the case. That Brian Fitzpatrick cost me $143,000. So that'll be fun to write about, I guess. The next game, Titans at the Panthers. Line open up. Panthers -4.5. Actually -3.5. It's up to 4. There's good amount of action on the Panthers. Everything else so far, except for 49ers Cardinals, has been about 50-50. But there's lots of public action on the Panthers. So who do you like in this game?
I do like the Panthers. Both of these teams have similar looking records, but if you look at the last few games, the Titans really have eked out a couple of wins that they maybe shouldn't have been able to. Against the Chargers, they won on a goal line fumble that may or may not have actually been a fumble or a touchdown. We don't really know. And then last week, they beat the Buccaneers by 4 points, where Jameis Winston just gifted them a couple touchdowns. In typical Jameis Winston fashion. But Mike Vrabel also went for some pretty stupid, really long field goals with Cody Parkey late in that game. So it was just a bad game all around. But if you look at the Panthers' schedule, they've won every game they've won by at least 6 points, and they've had a couple of close losses. Last week was an aberration. Like, they got crushed by one of the best teams in football, if not the best all-around team. So I'm not reading too much into that one, except for the revenge angle. The Panthers are going to want to get back on track. They're going to be desperate for a win, especially in the NFC South with the Saints playing so well. This is probably one of their last chances to set themselves up to potentially catch them. And just with Kyle Allen at the helm, the Panthers are 4-1 against the spread. Again, last week was the one time they didn't cover. So I'm just going with the Panthers this one. -4, I think, is a fine number. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to have a lot more trouble playing against this defense than he does against the Chargers and Bucs defenses, which are weaker, or the Bucs are at least weaker in the secondary, and the Chargers are banged up. So I like the Panthers this week, and I'll probably bet at least a unit on them for now.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of torn on this game. So on one hand, I think the spread's too low. So I made this line Carolina -6.5. The computer model I use says Carolina -7 is the right number. DVOA says Carolina -5.5. So any way you slice it, it's this line's too low. But I think the motivational and Vegas aspects favor Tennessee. So as I said before, 70% of the money is on the Panthers, so that's something to consider. The motivational aspect is the Panthers just got beat up on the West Coast. They're flying back to the East Coast, playing an early game here against the Titans. And after this game, they have to play the Packers, and then they have 2 divisional opponents after that. So I think they could be looking ahead past the Titans. I don't think they're going to respect the Titans at all. So I think that's something to consider as well. I can't imagine them being too focused in this like non-conference matchup. Like they barely see Tennessee at all. So they don't know anything about them. And, Tennessee, they've, Ryan Tannehill, it's fair to be skeptical about him, but ever since Cameron Wake has gotten back from injury, they played better defensively. So, considering how much pressure Kyle Allen saw last week and he struggled, like obviously Tennessee doesn't have the defensive line San Francisco has, but they still have Cameron Wake, Jarrell Casey, Harold Landry. Like these are guys who can get after the quarterback. And so I think they can give Kyle Allen some trouble. And, Kyle Allen has a fumbling problem. So like we could see that like surface again. And it just seems like this line is so low that it almost seems like it's a trap by Vegas. Like it seems like they're trying to bait the public into betting Carolina. It just looks like so obvious to take Carolina. So not gonna take the bait. I'm gonna pick Tennessee, but I'm not gonna bet this game.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with the looking ahead. I did have that in my notes that the Panthers were playing the Packers next week and they have the divisional opponents. But again, my whole theory is that the Panthers, they're just so desperate for a win at this point, I feel like. And I trust Ron Rivera as a coach and the ability to motivate his players. I'm not positive that it'll turn out that way, especially after how Carolina's game turned out last week, but I'll stick with them. But there's definitely a case to be made for Tennessee. I could see this being a trap. And you were right about the Broncos-Colts trap game last week, and I was on the wrong end of that one. So definitely get the case.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Broncos a lot more. I don't like Tennessee that much here. I don't think I'm going to be betting them. So, question: did you stop posting weekly teasers? Actually, I had a teaser a couple weeks ago. I didn't have a teaser last week. I just didn't like anything. I liked the Eagles in a teaser, but I couldn't find any team to pair with them. So, if I don't like it, I'm not going to post it. But I'm still trying to find one. So next game is Bears at the Eagles. This line opened up -3. It's up to 5. Decent amount of action on the Eagles. Not crazy though. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, so I'm on the Bears side here. That scares me to say it out loud. But if you think about it, the Eagles just won by 18 points. So they're primed for like an emotional letdown where they just, they needed to bounce back from that big primetime loss to Dallas, and they did. But now they're, their schedule, they're going to play the Bears, then they get a bye, but then they get the Patriots. So I don't think they'll be necessarily looking ahead to the Patriots a lot, but they may, with that bye and then the Patriots, it could be in the back of their mind. So there is a little bit of that there. The Bears are coming off a game that they should have won. And it's just, they missed the field goal, which is very hilarious. In what ended up being just a terrible, terrible, terrible end game for them. I still can't believe they did not run to get the ball closer for that field goal. But anyway, Trubisky has been bad this season, but they've started to find something on offense when they were pounding the rock last week, a little more against the Chargers. It'll be harder to do against the Eagles, who have a top 10 run defense. And the Bears defense has regressed a little bit, but it's still a top 10 overall defense in the NFL. They're ranked 7th. So I just think the Bears are going to find a way. Matt Nagy is under a lot of pressure right now. He'll find a way to get the team a little bit back on track. They'll keep it close. Yes, I know it's Trubisky, Dad. I know. I'm very aware of that. But I think the Eagles ultimately win this one, but the Bears keep it a lot closer than people think. Trubisky kind of plays a little bit better knowing that there's pressure on. So I could see this being a field goal game. So I'm on the Bears. I'm not super confident in it, so I probably won't bet it. But that's the side I'm picking.
Yeah, Trubisky was train wreck last week. He was just awful in the red zone. But the Bears actually moved the ball well in between the 20s. It was just when they got down to the red zone, they just couldn't convert. And if you look at the yardage in that game, the Bears outgained the Chargers by a lot. Like, it wasn't even close. So, yeah, I think that was a misleading result. People look at that and think, the Bears are terrible. And I think they were downgraded here too much. So the advanced spread on this game was Eagles -3. Now it's 5. So that, I say this every week. There shouldn't be a 2-point movement unless there are injuries involved. there are no injuries here. So yeah, I think this line's too high, and the other metrics I use kind of agree with that. The computer model I use says Philadelphia -2 is the correct number, so they're even less than 3 here. So the Eagles have a lot of problems. They commit too many penalties. There are too many drops. They fumble the ball. Like they're just. I don't know what's going on. I used to have a lot of respect for Doug Peterson, but he's not coaching this team very well. And yeah, I know they had a win at Buffalo. It was a must-win game. They played very well for the first time in I think since week 4, since they beat the Packers. But one result is not going to change my opinion on this team. I just think they're just too loosey-goosey at the ball. Like they're going to commit turnovers in this game. The Bears are going to be more desperate. This is kind of like a must-win for the game, a must-win game for them. And they're also playing a revenge game here because the playoff loss to the Eagles. So I mean that's another factor. So with all that in mind, I like the Bears considerably. It's going to be a 3 or 4 unit pick for me.
Yeah, and now I'm more confident in my pick. And I want to note that I did have the revenge game aspect written down in a very confusing way in my notes that just says, is Cody Parkey a double agent? And I wrote these like this morning. I have no idea what I was talking about there. Yeah, anyway, I do think that revenge game will play a part in this because the Bears feel like they should have won, but they didn't. And yeah, so and to answer this question below, Chase Daniels or Trubisky, or Chase Daniel rather, I think you have to go Trubisky just because he's younger. And Daniel got his chance to start against the Raiders in London and was pretty bad. So yeah, there's no upside with Daniel until they get someone else who can legitimately, possibly win games. I don't think you can do anything but start Trubisky in hopes that he shows what you wanted him to show when you foolishly traded up for him and took him with the second pick in that draft.
If Daniel wasn't terrible against the Raiders, I think you can make the case to go to him, but he was just so bad against the Raiders. Like you just saw him play poorly. So I think you have to ride it out with Trubisky and hope he improves. I will say this, like to defend him, like I don't like Trubisky at all, but like in his defense, his offensive line this year is a lot worse than it was last year. So I think that's affecting him as well. So if he had better protection, maybe he makes some improvements, but it's not working out for him. And I say this all the time, like you have to wonder where the Bears would be right now if they had Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. Like pick one of them, like not Trubisky, and definitely not trading up for him. Like they could have traded down a few spots and gotten either Watson or Mahomes. Just shows how bad that draft was for them.
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing too. People are starting to get on Matt Nagy's case and trying to put him on the hot seat. This is not Matt Nagy's fault. He's not the one that drafted Trubisky. He came in there and was like, yeah, I'll work with him and see what I can do. But he may not be developing well, and some of that might be on Nagy, but it's definitely not close to all of his fault. This is more on Trubisky in the front office.
Yeah, no, for sure. Although, the kicking thing at the end of that game was pretty bad. Like he could have gotten a little bit closer, I understand not throwing it, but just run the ball, get a few more yards.
He maybe comes from the Andy Reid School of Time Management, not just his coaching tree.
Yeah, that's definitely true. All right, next game, Vikings at the Chiefs. There's no line on this game because we don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to play. I assume it's going to be Matt Moore again, but I guess you never know. So any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm going the Chiefs either way, not just because I'm dressed like Andy Reid right now, though that does play a role in it. The Kirk Cousins gravy train will come to an end at some point, and I don't know when that will be, but it will happen. His hot streaks in Washington always lasted anywhere from 3 to 5 games, where he'd go out, beat some above-average opponent, and then, he'd come crashing back down to earth at some point. He struggles against good teams. The Chiefs have proven to be a good team. Their defense has been much better in recent weeks, despite injuries, which is a massive, massive thing for them. I thought Steve Spagnuolo's unit was going to be terrible, but they've sort of figured out a way to generate pressure, and they kept it close with Aaron Rodgers with Matt Moore at quarterback last week. The Packers barely covered in that game. So I think I would pick the Chiefs either way. If Mahomes plays, it's a no-brainer for me. But if Moore plays and the Vikings are favored, I do not like the Vikings as a road dog in Arrowhead, especially given that the Chiefs have lost consecutively there so many times. I think it's 3 in a row now, and they have a great home field advantage. So I really like the Chiefs in this spot. And depending the line, I'll probably bet a few units on it.
Okay, yeah. So I think I'm going to be on the Vikings. Unless Mahomes plays. But if it's Matt Moore, I think I'm going to be on the Vikings. I agree with you that Kirk Cousins is going to come crashing down soon. I think that might be next week when they play Dallas. But for this week, I think they're going to be aided by Mike Zimmer being on having extra time to prepare for this game, and he's just an elite coach. And anytime you give an elite coach extra time to prepare, it's such a big advantage for them. So that's basically the only reason I have right now for going with the Vikings. We don't know what the spread's going to be. We don't know if Mahomes is going to play. But I will say that Dalvin Cook against that Chiefs run defense just seems like a great matchup. And I believe he's 9,500 on DraftKings. And that seems like even too low for him. Like he should be priced with McCaffrey at 10,000. So yeah, I like the Vikings, with Zimmer having that edge.
Yeah, I could see that. And Dalvin Cook is definitely going to have a good week because he's playing against me in my one fantasy league that I care about. So I know he will have a good game. Having some bad luck there. But Zimmer is such a good coach. So that extra preparation definitely will play a role. But I do think Andy Reid's also a very good coach. He doesn't have the extra prep, but I'm a big Andy Reid fan if you can't tell by my costume. But Zimmer's great too. Zimmer's kind of everything I hoped Vic Fangio would be this year when I picked him for coach of the year. But that obviously hasn't panned out, as we'll probably talk about later. So, but yeah, Zimmer and Reid might be the best coaching match for the week.
Yeah. All right. So that we're kind of halfway through the early games. I should mention that we have a new sponsor. It's bookmaker.eu. So I don't have any copy for this. So maybe this is kind of like a bad advertisement. But bookmaker.eu is one of the sports books I use. I think it's one of the best sports books out there, along with Five Dimes. But bookmaker.eu I think is better overall because they have so many options. You can actually like make your own spread. So like for example, if the Eagles are -5, you can bet -4 or -6 or even like -2.5. You just have to pay more juice or sell juice. I actually like betting on bookmaker in the NBA because selling points in the NBA is actually I think a good thing to do because there are no key numbers in the NBA. So definitely check out bookmaker.eu. It's definitely my favorite sports book right now. So next game, Jets at the Dolphins. The Jets open up -5.5. It's down to 3. So after last night's 14-0 Dolphins win. So I guess people were impressed by that, I guess. Also, there were some injuries for the Jets. So who do you like in this fantastic matchup?
I cannot believe the spread's already moved 2.5 points. I love the Jets in this matchup. I've said this this is the third week in a row I'm saying it, and this is hopefully going to be the one time they don't come back to haunt me. But like the ghosts that are haunting Sam Darnold. But this is an Adam Gase revenge game. It's against a team that's trying to lose, except for maybe last night. They may not have been trying to lose. My crackpot theory is that because they own the Steelers' first-round pick, they came out playing harder and better than they played all year. So part of me thinks that the front office told the coaching staff, like, hey, maybe try to win this one so we can control our own picks, still be able to have a top overall pick possibly because we play the Bengals later in the year, but try to beat the Steelers here, knock them out of playoff contention and really send them in a spiral. But obviously that didn't pan out, and that's just a crazy theory. And that zero blitz they called on 3rd and 22 definitely looked like they were trying to lose at that point because that is something that I wouldn't even stupidly do in Madden against my friends. So I can't fathom why they did that if they weren't trying to lose. Miami's 3-0 against the spread the last 3 games, which shocks me. But the spread is so low for the Jets. Adam Gase is going to want to win. It's just whether or not he can get Sam Darnold to play well. And I think he will against a defense this bad that just lost its best player in Xavier Howard, which is why I'm so surprised the spread has gone in the opposite direction that I thought it would be. And also, just a note for Adam Gase, I know you didn't want Le'Veon Bell if you're for some reason listening to this, but you should absolutely give him more carries because the more he touches the ball, the better he's going to be. So get him more carries and you'll win this game by like 30.
Reportedly he's not a fan of Jamal Adams either. So maybe he just doesn't like talented players. Maybe he just wants to win with crap. I don't know. He did get was it Ryan Tannehill, and then was it Matt Moore to the playoffs?
I think it was
2016, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe he thinks he can take less talented players to the playoffs. I don't understand why he doesn't get the ball to Le'Veon Bell or want to have Jamal Adams. A very stupid decision. I used to have a lot of respect for Adam Gase. Considering what he did in Miami, I thought what he did in Miami was very impressive. But he's kind of shown his true colors here with the Jets. So I like the Jets as well. I'm not as enthusiastic about it because they just have so many injuries. Like they're missing 3 of their offensive linemen. Kelvin Beachum might come back this week, but right now they're down 3 offensive linemen. Sam Darnold has a thumb injury. CJ Mosley is going to be out again. They just traded Leonard Williams. Tremaine Johnson, I believe, got injured last week. So it's kind of like a skeleton crew here. And I think that the Jets are probably going to win this game by 3. It's going to be like one of those stupid like 13-10 games where the Dolphins are trying to lose, but the Jets won't win because they're just not good enough. So I think it's going to be an ugly game. I have no interest in betting it. If it falls to 2.5, maybe I'll say, okay, maybe the Jets are worth a bet. But at 3, I think the most likely result of this game is Jets winning by 3, and that's what the spread is. So I'm not going to bet this game, but I can understand why you are. It's just, it makes sense. I think the Dolphins are going to try to lose.
Yeah, I want to actually point out that I wrote, I won't fathom betting this game because I don't want to care about Adam Gase's coaching. About probably 3 hours after I wrote that, I think I put 2 units on the Jets because the line got so low. So I got to listen to my own notes here, but I did bet the Jets. I would maybe not recommend betting this game if you don't want to care about that, which I can't blame you for. But I think the Jets are the right side here, but all those injuries do make me a little nervous. But if the Dolphins found a way to go from 14 down to 13 or 14 up to 13 down in one game, they'll find a way to lose to the Jets by at least 3.
Yeah, they got outscored 27-0 in the final 3 quarters. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think if they played, if the Steelers and Dolphins played 100 times, I think the Steelers covered more often than not. What do you think about this question, Kalen? Was Sam Darnold at 3rd overall a mistake?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's a little too early to judge. This season's been difficult for him because he's had mono and he's come back from that, but the effects of mono can linger a little bit too. So I don't know if he's still dealing with any fatigue issues there, but it's not looking great, especially with Lamar Jackson playing so well. And Josh Allen has won some games for the Bills, but I don't know if he's been anything great this year. He's been solid, better than Darnold. So I don't know. I think it's too early to call him a mistake or a bust or anything. But if he doesn't improve in his 3rd year, then we can really, really start talking about like, wow, he did not pan out like we thought.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to judge him on this year because of the mono. And now he's a thumb injury. They're missing 3 offensive linemen. The game planning is just so bad. So I don't think you can say he's a bust. Like he looked awful against the Patriots, but he looked very good against the Cowboys the week before. So I'm not too down on him. And I think he started like 7 of 7 against the Jaguars, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know when the thumb injury happened. Like maybe it happened like right after that. And maybe that's why he struggled the rest of the game. So I still like Darnold. I'm still willing to believe in him if they surround him with good talent and good blocking. And if they don't trade away their good players. So it seems like a bad strategy to trade away your best players, but what do I know? This is the last of the early afternoon games. It's a 14-game slate, so it's kind of late. The Colts at the Steelers. The sign up and pick them, and the Steelers are now favored by 1. There's a ton of money coming in on the Colts, almost 80% of the action on Indianapolis. So the Colts are a public dog. So who do you like in this game?
I'm so glad. This feels like the first time in a long time I'm fading a public dog, which I know is a good strategy, but I've had a bad couple of weeks, and that's probably part of the reason I've been taking public dogs. But the Steelers are my side here. I mean, they're a little banged up at running back with James Conner dealing with the AC joint, but they should get Jalen Samuels back. And Mason Rudolph looked terrible in that first quarter against the Dolphins, but then he really sprung to life, and I feel like that brought him some confidence. He was out there with a gunslinger mentality, throwing the ball deep, throwing the ball pretty hard at his receivers. So I think that should help him, and that's just really a big factor for me. And then the other thing is, this is an outdoor game for the Colts. The Colts don't always play well outdoors. Pittsburgh is not an easy place to play, especially, I don't know what the weather's going to be, but if the weather's bad, the Steelers should definitely be favored here. And one other big thing, Adam Vinatieri has been struggling a ton lately, despite kicking in the dome. It is very hard to kick in Pittsburgh. Like, we see Chris Boswell miss a ton of kicks, but they keep him because, it's just so hard to play there and kick there. Josh Scobie was great for Jacksonville. He went there for 5 games and he couldn't hit anything from there. So I think Vinatieri will have some trouble despite being great in the elements in the past. And I just think the home team's the better side here. So I'm going with the Steelers. If they're slightly favored, that's great. I'm fine with that. I would expect them to win because they're also desperate to stay in the playoff race too.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely legit, and this game means so much more to Pittsburgh because they need a win to keep pace with the Ravens. They can't really fall to 3-5 and hope to pass Baltimore at some point. Whereas the Colts are 5-2. Like, if they lose this game, they're still in first place no matter what happens. So this game obviously means more to Pittsburgh, and I think you made a fantastic point about Vinatieri kicking. He's been dreadful as a kicker this year. We saw him in San Angeles really struggle in the opener, and if he makes some kicks there, the Colts are 6-1 instead of 5-2. But yeah, he's gonna have trouble kicking in Pittsburgh, and I think overall the Steelers roster is better than Indianapolis' roster. I like both teams actually, but Pittsburgh's roster, like excluding quarterback, like they're so stout everywhere. They run the ball very well. I know Connor might be out, but I still like Jalen Samuels. We really see like Deontay Johnson's coming to life. Like he looks great, and now they have 2 very good receivers. I love their offensive line. I love their pass rush. Run defense is great. Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary has solidified that. So while I like the Colts roster a lot, I think the Steelers are better overall. So that kind of makes me favor the Steelers. So with that in mind, if the Steelers are equal or better, shouldn't this line be like 3 or 3.5? So I think the public is misreading this game because of what they saw Monday night in the first quarter. Rudolph looked terrible, but the Colts secondary has allowed some big games to receivers. So I think this could be an instance where Juju Smith-Schuster or Deontay Johnson goes off. So I'll be playing them in DraftKings for sure, and I'm going to be betting on the Steelers. I like the Steelers a lot, so this is going to be like a 3 or 4 unit pick for me.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably match your unit count on this one. One other big thing, too, is the Colts barely beat the Broncos last week, and that was at home. And I think the Broncos are a worse team than the Steelers, I think at the very least they're similar to the Steelers in a way that the Steelers should be able to exploit the problems that the Colts had, get some pressure on Jacoby Brissett, and make him scramble a bit more, which he doesn't quite like. So I think I'll probably match your unit count. This is one of my favorite games on the slate because I just think the motivation there for the Steelers is going to be huge, especially with the Ravens primed to lose this week. But we'll get to that later.
Nice. I would say this is my 3rd favorite game on the slate. So there are 2 more I like more in this coming up. Question here before we move on to the late afternoon games. Be killing it this year against the spread. What's the difference? So I spent a lot of time in the summer kind of just practicing my handicapping. So what I did was I would go back to old games and where I didn't know what the score was at all, like or like who won. So I would just pull up everything leading up to that game, everything I wrote, like all the news stuff, like via Google, and try to not look at what the score was, and I would try to just handicap the game, and like that's what I did every Sunday during the summer. And I found a lot of like things I was doing wrong, and to kind of figure things out, and also just my handicapping from the NBA a year ago, where I went to kind of like a 4-pronged approach where I looked at the matchup, the motivation, the spread, and Vegas. And if something favored, if there are two things favoring a team, I would pick them. So that's kind of what I've done in the NFL. And when I was practicing my handicapping for the NFL, that's what I was implementing too. And I found that I was hitting a large percentage of my plays doing that. So that's what I've done. I've implemented it this year, and it's worked out so far through 8 weeks. So hopefully the next 9 are just as good. So so before we get to the late afternoon games, we're sponsored as well by DraftKings. So you can go to DraftKings.com, enter in promo code Waltzer Football. That's one word, Waltzer Football, and you can play. You get a bonus with your first deposit, so you get to play for free. So why not do it? All right, there are 4 late afternoon games. The first one is Lions at the Raiders. This line opened up Raiders -1, it's up to 2. There's a good amount of action on the Lions. Not as much as the Colts, but it's about almost 70% of the money is on the Lions. So who do you like in this game?
I am once again fading a public dog, which feels nice. So I like the Raiders here. I just think the Raiders just nearly beat the Texans. They played pretty well. They're coming home. They're playing a Lions team that might be looking ahead to their games against the Bears. I know the Raiders are playing on a short week against the Chargers upcoming, but I don't know how much they're going to be worried about that because they're returning home to the Black Hole. The Black Hole is just such a good home field advantage. I think that the Lions are a little bit overrated this year. They started off underrated with some good losses or some tough losses to some good teams, including the Chiefs and the Packers most recently. But they didn't cover last week against the Giants, even though they led by double digits for most of that game. And I just think they might have a little bit of a letdown. There were some trade rumors around the team. They were kind of bummed out that Quandre Diggs got traded to Seattle. So I don't think by any means Matt Patricia's going to lose the locker room or anything, but there may have been some distraction if Darius Slay didn't know if he was getting traded. And their ground game just isn't good with the Kerryon Johnson on IR. I think they'll be able to keep it close, but I think the Raiders ultimately win this one. So at the number of -2, -1, wherever it ends up falling, I like the Raiders in this one.
Yeah, I like the Raiders as well. It really, the unit count will depend on the injuries. And so Snacks Harrison went down once again last week. If he's out, that's just a massive body that the Lions are not going to have against Josh Jacobs, which is a huge deal. And the Raiders run the ball very well. The Raiders, real quick, we have a question here, or I guess comment. The Colts line is way better, I guess, than the Steelers. I love both lines. They're both great. I'm not going to argue which one's better. I think they're both. I think they're both fantastic. But the Raiders have a great line as well. I know Rodney Hudson went down. Their Pro Bowl center last week. But I was watching their backup, Andre James. He actually played pretty well against the Texans. So I don't think Hudson's going to be missed too much. It's only one starter injured on the offensive line. So I think the Raiders will play well. And if you look at all 4 things here, the Raiders offense and defense, Lions offense and defense, run offense and pass offense, I'm talking about. The worst aspect here of either team is the Lions' run offense. They can't run the ball at all with Kerryon Johnson gone. There's just no threat. So while I think Matthew Stafford will have success throwing the ball, it might be difficult because the Raiders stopped the run well in the first place, and they're not going to get anything on the ground. So I think that's just going to be tough. So I think the Raiders are. I think they're about equal with the Lions. I don't see why these teams are separated at all. So if these teams are even, this line should be 3. So we're getting a key number here, and I think the most likely result of this game is the Raiders winning by 3. So I like the Raiders quite a bit. Just like I said, it really depends on the injuries. So I put 3 units on the Raiders for now, but that might move up it might move up or down a little bit. But I still think I'm going to be on the Raiders no matter what.
Yeah, and I have 1 to 2 units on them. It, again, depends on the injury report which way I'll go. The only thing giving me pause is that short week against the Chargers for the Raiders. But again, I don't think that has much of an impact. It's a divisional game, but what are they going to be mad about that the Chargers went to Los Angeles? No one likes them there, so it's not really. I don't think there's going to be too much bad blood.
Yeah. So with the short week, is the rule is usually if a team's favored, There's a good chance they're going to be looking ahead. And the Raiders are favored, but considering that there's so much money on the Lions, and the Lions are such a big public dog, it might seem to the Raiders that they're kind of sort of underdogs. And like everyone's going to be picking the Lions in the pregame TV shows. So I don't think the Raiders will be looking ahead. Like there may be like a very small chance they do, but I don't think so. Especially like you said, coming home for the first time since week 2. They've been on the road for so long, so I think they're going to be looking forward to playing at home against the Lions. So next game, Buccaneers to the Seahawks. This is one of the 2 games I mentioned earlier that I absolutely love this week. This line opened up Seahawks -5.5. It's up to 6. About equal action. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Buccaneers. Last week, Seahawks got off to such a fast start against Atlanta, went up 24-0, but then they just kind of let things go and let Atlanta get back in the game, and ended up, I think it ended up being a push with what I bet, -7. I don't know if that was actually a full push everywhere, but I know garbage time played a factor there, but they allowed almost 500 passing yards to Matt Schaub. I can't say I have much faith in their defense after that. And I just think, even though this is a home game for the Seahawks, Russell Wilson during his tenure is 30, 25, and 2 against the spread at home, though he is 46-14 straight up. So I don't think they're unbeatable there either, because the Ravens just crushed them in Seattle a couple weeks ago. I don't think the Bucs win this one, but I think that they can cover. They kept it close with the Titans last week, and I don't think that I'm not a big fan of the Titans or anything, but I think the Seahawks are just so overrated right now. I thought they would end up beating the Ravens, and they lost them by 17. Their record, the Seahawks record, looks a lot better than how the team has played. So I think them giving 6 points, so we get the 2 key numbers and maybe a third if the line ends up moving to 7 somehow. I did see 6.5 out there. I like the Buccaneers in this one. I just think that Seattle may come back down to earth at some point, and I think that Atlanta getting back in the game was a little bit of a harbinger for that.
Yeah. So it's common here. Seahawks will do what the Niners did to the Bucs on opening day. I don't think so. I think there's a big difference between these 2 teams, and the 49ers defense is so much better than Seattle's. Seattle, they have, while the 49ers have the best pass rush in the NFL, Seattle only has one guy who can get to the quarterback. The 49ers have an elite secondary. Seattle has one good corner, and that's it. So there's a big difference between these 2 teams. Obviously, Russell Wilson's much better than Garoppolo, but that's kind of where it ends. I love the Buccaneers here. I think the Buccaneers win outright. You mentioned the Seahawks road or home record, and in the past it's been great. This year they haven't played that well at home. So you mentioned the Ravens beating them by 14. Their other 3 home games this year, they beat the Bengals by 1 point. They lost to Teddy Bridgewater in a blowout. It got close to the end with some garbage time scores, but it was a blowout. And then they barely beat the Rams on Thursday night, and they would have lost to the Rams had Greg Zuerlein hit that field goal. So the Seahawks don't play nearly as well at home as people think they do. And I think their defense is bad. As you mentioned, the defense is bad. I think Jameis Winston is going to have a great day. I think Winston is going to have the same sort of day he had against the Rams. It's kind of like the same sort of deal. And I think the Buccaneers get up big and the Seahawks come back, and maybe Seattle wins by 3. I think some team's going to win by 3 or 7. It's going to be close like that. But I do like the Buccaneers, and there's one major injury in this game, and that's the center Justin Britt, who was out last week against Atlanta. Seattle, they couldn't really move the ball in the second half, and I think part of that was Britt being out of the lineup. Without Britt, they have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And against Tampa, that's not something you want, because the Tampa's, while their secondary sucks, their defensive line is awesome. They have Ndamukong Vitave on the inside. Then they have Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul, who just came back, on the outside. So they should be able to get to Wilson a lot. They should be able to stop the run very easily. So I just think Seattle's offense will sputter in like the first half. And then eventually, Wilson will do his thing and he'll get some points in the second half. But I think the Buccaneers will win this one outright.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear we're on the same side for this one. I just think everything you say makes sense to me, and I wasn't even considering the Justin Britt injury, but with him out for the year, the Seahawks really could collapse a little bit on offense just because Wilson, when he has time in the pocket, can do a lot. But when he has to constantly scramble, he can still do a great job. That's why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But the more he gets hit, the worse that offense is going to be. And if they can't move it on the ground, that makes a big impact. So I think that matchup, Seahawks O-line versus Tampa's D-line, is going to be one to watch.
Yeah. So comment here, Winston will cost Tampa the game. He'll throw 3 picks. Could happen for sure. But he's playing a bad defense, and one of the worst defenses he's seen, I believe, since that Rams game, right? Because they played Tennessee last week, and Tennessee, as I said, they're better with Cameron Wake. And then they played the Panthers in London, and I don't think you can judge Winston for that because Tampa was missing 2 starting offensive linemen in that game. So yeah, I think this is the kind of, and then the Saints beforehand. The Saints have a very good defense. So this is the easiest defense Winston has seen since that 55-40 game against the Rams, and I think it's going to go that way. All right, next game, the Browns at the Broncos. This line was Broncos -2.5 before Joe Flacco was announced being out. Then this line went off the board as soon as Flacco was announced out. Now he's out 5 to 6 weeks. And now the Browns are favored by 3. And there's tons of money coming in on Cleveland, understandably so, because Brandon Allen is starting for the Broncos. So who do you like in this game?
We're going to have some fun here with Brandon Allen. I have numbers from his preseason. I'm going to tell you them before I tell you my pick. So
Okay.
The last 2 preseasons, Allen has completed 64% of his passes for 692 yards, a single touchdown, and he's been sacked 9 times and thrown 5 interceptions. So not exactly great, especially considering that this is preseason and he was under Sean McVay's tutelage. That said, I'm throwing it out the window and I'm going to go with the Broncos.
Nice.
Because this line has moved 6 points, which it's for an injury. I understand that. But how well has Joe Flacco been playing in recent weeks? The answer is not very. So is the team going to be able to survive without Joe Flacco? I think yes. I don't think that the Browns offense is going to have a ton of success against the Broncos defense. Broncos defense did a great job getting pressure on Jacoby Brissett, breaking through that offensive line and making life really difficult on the Colts. The Browns have been dreadful this year on offense, save for Nick Chubb, and they did not do anything to upgrade their offensive tackle situation at the trade deadline, mostly because Trent Williams wasn't traded by a foolish Washington Redskins franchise. But my thought process is I don't like this game very much, but how much worse can Allen be than Joe Flacco? It could be a lot. I will accept that. That is possible. But the Broncos are the home team. They're getting 3 points here. It's tough to play in Denver, and Cleveland isn't a very good team. So I'm leaning towards the Broncos. I'm not sure I will bet on this game because the idea of betting Brandon Allen kind of scares me. But again, how much worse can he be than Flacco?
Yeah, if there's 5 interceptions in the preseason and what do you say, 9 sacks? That's horrifying. And you mentioned Sean McVay. McVay is one of the best offensive minded coaches in the NFL, and if he can't get a quarterback to play well, he's kind of a lemon. And I actually thought Allen played pretty well in the 2017 preseason with the Jaguars. He actually outplayed Blake Bortles, which is, I guess, not a difficult thing to do. But I don't know what happened to him since he's regressed. And I guess the fact that the Jaguars cut him meant that he looked terrible in practice. So, none of that's surprising at all. And now he's to play a defense that has Myles Garrett on it and Olivier Vernon. And the Broncos might not have the right tackle, Juwan James, which against Myles Garrett just seems like a very troubling task for Brandon Allen, considering those 9 sacks. Like, I didn't even know about those 9 sacks. And now I know that he's going to go against Myles Garrett with maybe without his right tackle. I think there are going to be a ton of sacks in this game. So I'm going to be on the Browns. I can't pick I can't pick the Broncos. I can't pick Brandon Allen. If I always say that I like picking teams, good teams whose quarterbacks are out for the first game and their backup will play and the team will rally around the backup. But the Broncos are not a good team, so they don't fall under that purview there. So so I'm going to be on the Browns, but I don't understand how 72% of the people are betting on the Browns. Like, how are you rushing to the window and be like, oh, I want money on the Browns? Like why? Like, they're so poorly coached. They're poorly quarterbacked. They make mistakes. They fumble. They had 3 turnovers in 3 consecutive games last week. Like, this team just sucks. I just like, how can you bet this team? But how can you bet Brandon Allen? So I don't see how people are touching this game at all. I'm not going to touch this game. I'm not betting it, but I will be on the Browns for office pool purposes.
Yeah, I'm on the Broncos for office pool purposes. I am not coming close to betting on Brandon Allen in real life, but this is easily the worst game on the slate. I just don't think I can't tell you how this one's going to go. I'm just going with Brandon Allen solely because I think there's a world that exists where he's better than Joe Flacco, and it might be this one.
Well, there you go. There's a comment that says he might be better than Flacco. I don't know. I mean, Flacco's obviously not the quarterback he once was, but if you tell me a McVay coach quarterback takes 9 sacks and throws 5 interceptions in the preseason, it's just man, this could be very ugly. I could see a couple of pick sixes.
I will say one thing. I'm fairly certain that Sean McVay maybe wanted to keep Brandon Allen after this preseason, but I don't think he did. So I don't know if that's true. I may have read that somewhere. I may have dreamed that, but I thought I heard that at one point.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's worth looking into. Or maybe not, because I'm not going to bet this game either way. The last of the late afternoon games, the Packers at the Chargers. I say at the Chargers, but they're going to be like 90% Packer fans in the stands. This line opened up Packers -3. It's creeping up to 3.5. It's actually already 3.5 at Bovada. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Packers. You mentioned that this isn't a home game for the Chargers. There is no such thing as a home game for the Chargers. They're kind of just a nomadic team at this point. I think this is pretty simple for me. The Packers just won by a touchdown in Arrowhead. They're playing a Chargers team in a pseudo road game for the Packers, but it's really going to be a home game. Matt LaFleur is 6-2 against the spread. The Chargers just fired their offensive coordinator. I could easily see them winning by a touchdown in this game. The spread just feels too low to me. I don't think the Chargers are as good as everyone thinks that they are. And even last week, the Packers were favored by more against the Chiefs than they are against the Chargers. And granted, that was partially due to Matt Moore playing, but I don't think that 3 points is enough against this Chargers team. So I'm comfortable with the Packers. I'm going to go probably 2 or 3 units. The one concern I have is I don't know how healthy Brian Bulaga is. He was dealing with a finger injury, I think, last week during the game. If he doesn't play, that could cause some more problems for the Packers, so that would drop my unit count a little bit. But the Packers are so much better than the Chargers, and they should be able to route them on offense.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I mean, I like the one concern I have personally is that 90% of the money is on the Packers, which is just absurd. This is the most lopsided bet game of the week, and it's not even close. The Colts getting almost 80% is quite substantial. The Cowboys Monday Night Football, which we'll talk about in a second, that's like 75%. But 90% is kind of insane, and it's tough to bet into that. But I'm going to do that here, and it's because Aaron Rodgers is on fire right now, and he's been hot even without Devontae Adams since week 4, and now there's a chance that Devontae Adams is going to come back. So I just think the Packers are just way better than the Chargers. I agree with you. This line's way too short. My line for this game is Green Bay -5. The DBOA says Green Bay -4 is the right number. So I had a dilemma here, which I wrote about on the site. So I like the Packers. I want to bet the Packers. The question is how many units, because if the Chargers are down their 2 defensive tackles again, and if Brian Balaga's out, that's going to make a big difference. So it's going to be between like 2 and 4, maybe even 5 units. And the problem is that this line's going to rise because the public's all over the Packers. The Sharps are not betting the Chargers. So this line has to move up. Otherwise, sportsbooks are going to lose a ton of money if the Packers cover. So this line is going to rise. I think it's going to go up to 4, maybe 4.5. But without seeing the injury report, we don't know how many units we should place on this game. So what I did was kind of like hedge my bets already. So I locked in 2 units on the Packers already at -3, -125. And I just think it's going to go up soon. So I was just going to say, like, all right, if this line moves up, but the injury report is very favorable for Green Bay, I'm going to bet more units on Green Bay. If it's not, then I'm going to stay with 2 units on the Packers. So that's my plan for this game.
Yeah, and I'll probably lock in right after we're done with this show, like you did with 2 units right now, and then depending the injury report, I may lock in more later.
Yeah,
It's a good way to play it.
Yeah, what do you think about this? TJ saw in his newsfeed the Chargers could bench Rivers. I hadn't seen that at all. I don't know.
I haven't seen that either. Is Tyrod Taylor the backup there?
I believe so. Yeah, there's no. It's not like they've Easton Stick as well. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be enjoy watching what Easton Stick can do. I'm assuming it's much less than Phillip Rivers. I do like Easton Stick as a developmental guy, though. I will say that, but I don't think they should do that at all. They need to stick with Phillip Rivers. If they were thinking of benching Phillip Rivers, they should have traded him at the deadline because the Bears would have given up too much for him. I'm sure.
Yeah, like for what they were 12-4 last year. They were in the second round of the playoffs, and things just haven't gone well for them this year because they had so many offensive line injuries, and their defense is kind of decimated by injuries as well. So I think the Chargers could bounce back next year if they have better luck. Like, why move on from Rivers? It doesn't make sense. Like he's still playing very well. Like I think he misfired 10 times last week or 8 times or something like that. But there were 5 drops in that game. 2 by Mike Williams, 2 by Hunter Henry, and 1 by Keenan Allen. And Keenan Allen wasn't even 100%. He was falling all over the field because his hamstring was 100%. So what, like, Rivers is like the last person who's responsible for this. It's not like he's playing poorly. Like I think he's playing very well.
So. Yeah, no, I would agree. The only reason that they should replace Rivers is if they get Tom Brady this offseason, which has been a hilarious debate on New England talk radio this past week with Brady, all that, like, oh, he might not be happy here, bubbling up again for the 14th time in the last 20 years. I don't think Brady goes anywhere, but they were talking about it and saying, like, oh, you could go to the Chargers. And I was like, that makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. I don't think Brady's going anywhere. Call me crazy, but I don't think that's going to happen. All right, Sunday Night Football, Patriots at the Ravens. This line open up, Patriots -4.5. It's down to 3.5. Decent money on the Patriots, around 70%. Not a crazy amount, though. So who do you like in this game?
I love the Patriots in this spot. This is my favorite pick this week. Listen, Bill Belichick is so good against first and second year quarterbacks. I know Lamar Jackson's been dynamic this year, and he's had some really good games. Just being able to make plays against the Seahawks and win that game by 17 on the road, that looks like a good win. But the Ravens are an overrated team, and the Patriots have a terrific defense, one of the best defenses I've ever seen. They have the linebacker play needed so that they could spy Lamar Jackson, keep up with him, and contain him. And they have the lockdown players in the secondary that are needed to, avoid letting Marquise Brown run wild and get deep balls and make it so that Lamar Jackson doesn't have to scramble and can still move the ball downfield. I don't think the Ravens are going to move the ball very well this week. The one aspect of the defense that didn't play as well against the Browns was their run defense. So they're going to have to rely on Mark Ingram in that game. But the Patriots have won all their games this season by 16 points, except one where they beat Buffalo on the road by 6. Now, I know the Patriots offense has not been playing well this year, but it's not like the Ravens have a great defense. And I think the Ravens are more overrated than the Patriots. I think this line of 3.5 is just way too low, even with the Patriots as, being a road team in this game. I just think their defense finds a way to shut down Lamar Jackson. Until I see a reason not to trust the Patriots defense, I will not bet against them.
Yeah, so I'll make a case for the Ravens. I'm on the Patriots with you, but I'll make a case for the Ravens. So John Harbaugh is a very good coach in my opinion, and the fact that he's coming off a bye with extra time to prepare, John Harbaugh has an excellent record. He's I don't have it in front of me, but he's something like 9-2 against the spread off a bye or something like that. And usually week one, the Ravens play well, and coming off Thursday night games, the Ravens play well. Just because John Harbaugh is an excellent coach, and I think he's going to have a great game plan prepared for this game. He's probably just not slept at all, like trying to figure out how to beat the Patriots. Also, I would say one of the most likely results of this game is the Patriots winning by 3. So you can look at it from that perspective. You have to pay the hook. I think -3.5, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the least likely spreads to cover, just because, it's going to be close, and close games are often decided by 3 points. So there's that as well. And DVOA says this line should be New England -2. So that it says this line's short. But I think there are more things favoring the Patriots. You mentioned many of them. I will say this, that the advanced spread on this game was Patriots -5.5. So this line dropped 2 points. I don't know for what. I don't know why this line dropped 2 points, because the Ravens were off and the Patriots won by 14. They covered against the Browns. I don't know why this line moved, but I think you'd be right to take advantage of this. You're way more confident in this game than I am, just because I mentioned before the margin of 3 and Harbaugh coming off a bye. But I think it's foolish to bet against Belichick and Brady. Belichick against young quarterbacks, as you said, and then Brady. Period. I mean, there's a reason why he's the greatest quarterback in NFL history. He's 181 and 121 against the spread. So. If you've been betting against them, you've been losing lots of money. So I'm going to stick with Brady. And by the way, Brady is 20-11 against the spread on Sunday Night Football. Not that means very much, but it is something. So I'm going to be on the Patriots. But I don't even know if I'm going to bet this game. But I like the Patriots.
I think I already locked in 2 units on this game and may end up betting more. I just think they're going to be able to take away that scrambling ability from Lamar. And then once he sits in the pocket, is he going to be able to make the throws? Because aside from the Miami game, and I'm going to pull up his stats here, I don't know how great he's been as a passer this year. I mean, he's been better than he was last year. All right, he's had a few good games as a passer this year. He had one against Cleveland, but that was in a loss. So I'm way more confident in the Patriots defense than I am in the Ravens offense.
No, I agree. I completely agree. And you're going to have Stephon Gilmore take away Marquise Brown, his only reliable deep threat. So he's going to have to throw to Mark Andrews a lot. And Andrews dropped like 3 passes against Seattle. So despite, he's been playing well otherwise, but he's been dropping passes lately. I agree. The Patriots have some great linebackers. They should be able to take away Jackson scrambling. And Belichick will be able to game plan against Jackson. I just wonder, like, Harbaugh is going to have some wrinkles prepared, having 2 weeks to prepare for this game. So I'm curious to see what they are. And I think it's going to be interesting. And like I said, I think the most likely result is Patriots winning by 3, but I think it's more likely than not that they'll win by more than 3 rather than, the opposite occurring. So, all right, Monday night, Cowboys at the Giants. The sign opened up Cowboys -7. It's still 7. As I said before, 3/4 of the action on Dallas. So kind of not a surprise there. People love betting the Cowboys because they're such a public team. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Giants +7. This just seems like a very high spread for the Cowboys on the road. I know they're coming off a bye too. I don't love betting against the 2 teams coming off a bye, but the Cowboys are a bit overrated, and while the Giants haven't been good, Daniel Jones was able to backdoor cover last week against the Lions on a 7-point spread. I could see something similar happening this week. Dallas may still be riding high off of that game against the Eagles where they just dominated them in prime time. If they don't come fully prepared for the Giants, I think that it could be closer than people anticipate. I would assume the Cowboys still win this game, but I'm expecting that backdoor touchdown. And I think the addition of Leonard Williams for the Giants should help their defensive line get some extra pressure on Dak Prescott. The Cowboys will be mostly healthy, though, but they'll find a way to keep it close to the Giants. So I'm on them, but I don't know if I'm going to end up betting this game. Just because I got burned by Cowboys in primetime a couple weeks ago. So I am going to wait to see what you say and then see if I'm going to want to bet this.
No, this is one of my top picks of the week. I love the Giants. I think The Giants fulfill, as I mentioned before, there's the matchup, the spread, motivation, and Vegas. The Giants fill three of those angles. So spread wise, I made this line Dallas -3.5, and I like to look at different things just in case I'm wrong. But DVOA says Dallas -3.5 is the right spread as well. So that made me more confident in that regard. And it's not a surprise that this line's inflated up to 7 because, as I said before, people love to bet the Cowboys on national TV. And I think the game you're referencing, I believe, is the Eagles game, right? Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
That was an instance where the public was against the Cowboys because of what they saw against the Packers and the Jets. And they just they were kind of disgruntled with the Cowboys. They didn't want to bet them. And that was kind of as a public dog game where the Eagles are getting lots of money. So this kind of, I think this is a different situation. And as I said, the Cowboys are getting tons of action. So that's the Vegas side of it. The Giants are a big public, non-public home underdogs. So the Cowboys are just getting so much money. It's kind of, and it's a standalone game. So there's going to be even more money than usual on the Cowboys. So that's the spread and the Vegas. As for the motivational, so the Cowboys, they kind of dumpster fired the Giants in week 1. And I think this is a big revenge game for the Giants. The Cowboys are big road favorites. They're a veteran team. So the fact that they're big road favorites here and against a team they've already slaughtered, it's like, what's the motivation for them to win this game when they have a tougher game coming up next week against the Vikings? Meanwhile, the Giants are going to try to get revenge. And yeah, you mentioned Leonard Williams. This Giants team that got blown out in week 1, it's not nearly the same team. That Giants team was playing with Eli Manning. They didn't have Golden Tate. They didn't have Leonard Williams. And now they're going to have all those guys. And Dallas's defense is not that good. And you're going to have Daniel Jones. If he needs to, I think he can throw a garbage time touchdown. We saw it last week against the Lions. So that could happen again. And the other thing you mentioned is that the Cowboys are coming off a bye. I love elite teams or elite coaches or even very good coaches coming off byes. Jason Garrett's not a very good coach. He's a poor coach. I don't think he's going to have a great game plan prepared with 2 weeks off. And is Jason Garrett spending his time preparing for the Giants during the week off? I don't think so. And based on what I've seen from him off the field, he's most certainly not. And maybe that's something I'll share in the future. But he's definitely not preparing for this game. So I like the Giants a lot. I love the Giants. They're going to be a 5-unit pick for me.
Okay, now I definitely will bet on this game. Now, if I get burned, I can somewhat blame it on you. But yeah, no, I'm glad we're on the same side for a lot of the games this week. But this one will be good. Hopefully, I'll get back on the winning side for one of these Monday night games. I think I've lost 2 in a row. So, and yes, both the teams in question do stink. I would agree with that. Though the Cowboys are a little bit better, probably.
I actually think the Cowboys are a good team. I just don't think they're going to be focused at all for this game. And the Giants, as I said before, it's a big revenge game for them. So yeah, I like the Giants a lot. There's one comment I want to bring up going back to the Patriots-Ravens game. The only good team that Brady has faced so far is the Bills, and he was garbage. I don't know what you think about this, but I have a couple of issues here. First of all, I don't think the Bills are a good team. Second, Brady was injured in that game, so I'm not going to read anything into that. And third, the Bills have a very good defense, whereas the Ravens do not. The Ravens don't have a good defense at all. They can't rush the passer whatsoever. So what do you think?
Yeah, further beyond that, the Patriots' offensive line, not that it's been upgraded since then, was pretty weak in that game. And against a good pass rush, Brady was under a lot of pressure. And like you said, he was dealing with an injury. So I think all of those factors kind of came to a head in that game, and that's why it was so close. I'll concede that the Patriots have not played many good teams yet so far, but saying that Brady was garbage in that game, you got to take into context those factors there because it's been a down year for Brady, but a lot of it has been on the poor play of the offensive line. And if they get Shaq Mason back, they did not have Shaq Mason last week, and they were down 3 offensive linemen. They still beat the Browns by 14, which tells you a lot about how bad Cleveland is. But Like you said, the Ravens don't have a pass rush. Before he got hurt, Pernell McPhee was one of their starting edge rushers, and Pernell McPhee was the fourth stringer on the Redskins last year. Like, I don't know how he's still in the league as a top pass rusher. So I do not expect Brady to be under a lot of heat, and I think hopefully he'll figure out a way to get the ball to Mohamed Sanu and have some better receiving weapons, because he did not have a lot of them in Buffalo either. So that's my very long-winded rant about why the Patriots offense has not been succeeding, but why they could get better.
Oh yeah, I didn't even know Shaq Mason was due to come back, because I mean, injury reports don't get released till Wednesday, and I obviously didn't look at it. But if Shaq Mason comes back this week, I said before I'm not betting on the Patriots. If Mason's back, I might bet on the Patriots. So.
Yeah, and I don't know for a fact if Mason's going to come back, but I think he was questionable for a good chunk of last week. So he'll at least have the chance to be back. I'll be keeping a close eye on that, though, so I'll let you know once I know something.
Okay, yeah, that'll be a huge deal, because Mason is one of the best guards in the NFL, and you're right. Like, Brady has had poor protection, but yeah, I mean, also the comment said, the Patriots haven't played good teams, which is true, but the Ravens aren't a good team either. They got blown out at home by the Browns. Like, how good can they be? I know everyone was impressed by that win in Seattle, but again, Seattle's not that good either. They almost lost to the Bengals at home. Like, this Seattle team's overrated. So I feel like almost every team's overrated. There are like 7 good teams. Actually, in my power rankings, I post power rankings on my site. But on an Excel sheet, I have power rankings and I have a number value assigned to each of those teams correlating to the spread. So, like, for example, like the 49ers are number 1 for me. They're -7. So the 7 points, for the line for them. So if they're playing an even team on a neutral field, there would be -7 over that neutral team, or that average team. So, like, it's very top heavy. Like, I have 3 teams that are 7, -6.5, -6.5. But from like 13 to like 24, they're separated by like 1.5 point. Like, there's so many teams that are even. I think like the Ravens are kind of like in that mix. They're not a good team. They're kind of like mediocre. I don't know if you feel that way about the Ravens, but that's how they seem to me. It's just like very average.
Yeah, my argument for this would be take Lamar Jackson off the Ravens and put Baker Mayfield there. How good would the team be? Would they be the Cleveland Browns or the Baltimore Ravens? Like, that's a very confusing way of putting it, but if they had a quarterback playing closer to Baker Mayfield than Lamar Jackson, I think that they'd be, 2-5 as opposed to, what are they, 5-2 right now? Something along those lines. 5-2. So I would say that Lamar Jackson has made a massive difference for that team.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I was actually trying to share the screen, but I don't think this is cooperating right now. But yeah, anyway, maybe I'll do that next week. So yeah, that's it for this week. So anything to plug?
Yeah, we got some game coverage for the Ravens Patriots over on NBC Sports Boston. We'll have plenty in the lead up to that. That's a huge game, one of the better, more entertaining games matchup wise of the week. Over at Rigo's Rag for Washington Redskins stuff. We're still reeling from the trade deadline, so we'll have some takes on the not dealing Trent Williams. And if you want to talk about anything with me, go on Twitter at Jacob Kamiker, and I'm always down to talk football and talk about my picks, and I'll share some of them in the lead up to the early window on Sunday.
Sounds good. I'm at waltzerfootball.com. Updates to the picks. The Friday injury report is so huge, so my Saturday updates are kind of like majors. So, like, this has happened a couple weeks in a row where I'll say a pick on this podcast, and then I'll change it on Saturday based on some injuries that have happened. So check out waltzerfootball.com for pick updates. Also, 2020 mock draft update and fantasy football rankings updated. And 2021 mock draft update is coming. Maybe not this week, but the next week. So look for that as well. Jacob, I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right.